Is it almost a guarantee that the Detroit Pistons rookie Ausar Thompson is going to be in the starting lineup? I give my prediction today in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Johnson with 1 second to go.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more right now. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. So later on in the podcast, basically, I kind of want to let you guys know this. For the entirety of training camp, what the podcasts are going to be centered around, which I think you guys probably picked up on, is simply based off of what we hear from training camp that specific day. So each day so far this week, all I've talked about is what Monty Williams has talked about, the players we were able to hear from, what they've said, interesting tidbits, interesting quotes, things that matter, that kind of stuff. So throughout training camp, that's all we're going to be talking about in the podcast, nothing else, only whatever we get. I'm going to tell you guys what we've heard and what it means. So that's all today's podcast is going to be about. So stay tuned for everything we heard today from Monty Williams and a few other players. But the place I want to start at first is an area I feel like we've almost talked about in every episode now the last week. But, I mean, this is what Monty keeps feeding us. And I think this has to be easily the main talking point because of how important Monty seems to be making this topic, it seems like to me. And it's Ausar Thompson, the Pistons' first or their 5th overall pick. We've talked about all offseason. Will Ausar Thompson start? Will he come off the bench? And the argument I've given is that if he is a good defensive player as a rookie, I think he might force his way into the starting lineup with how the Pistons have talked about defense all offseason. And through the first few days of training camp, all Monty Williams has done is praise Ausar Thompson and talk about how important defense is at every turn he possibly can. So on the last episode with Brandon Dent, we talked about, hey, will Ausar start? Is there a likelihood with that? And we talked about how, yeah, it seems like it's pretty likely, but anything can happen still. I'm going to play a clip here. It's Monty Williams talking about Ausar Thompson. Let me put my headphones on real quick so I can hear it with you guys. I'm going to play this clip from what Monty said today. I'm recording this on the 5th about Ausar Thompson, and then we can come back right after that. But let's go ahead and listen to this clip.
He's been able to keep up.
Yeah, he has. Physically, he has. We've loaded him up mentally, so he's probably his head's probably spinning and other things right now. But I don't mind that. I think stress allows for all of us to grow in capacity. I think the more you're stressed out, the more stuff we throw at him allows for him to grow. But then it also tells me, who he is and how we can help him. And we've stressed him out. We've hit him with a lot. But he has physical gifts and natural playing ability that allows for him to overcome some things that he might not know. But we think he's going to be phenomenal. And we think he's going to be an intricate part of our team. And there's a chance that can happen right away, just based on what we've seen this summer and in camp.
All right, so let me take my headphones off real quick. For those of you guys watching on YouTube, yes, they are my Xbox headphones. It is what it is. My cord for my Beats got chewed up by my dog. You guys have dogs? You guys get it. But anyways, the last part of what Monty Williams spoke about just now, that is the most important part of what he said just now. There's a few other things he said in there, but the most important thing I took away from that is they think he's going to be an extremely integral part to what they do, and he specifically went out of his way. And there's a few things that Monty has done. I'm going to tell you guys this. When NBA coaches are asked questions and they go out of their way to talk about something that you wasn't really specifically asked, read into it. It's something you read into because they don't have to say those things. A lot of coaches like to just give the answer that they were asked, hurry up, get press conference over, get back to practice, they don't want to have to deal with the media most of the time. So when they go out of their way to bring up something in regards to a question, it's important. And Monty wasn't asked, hey, will Ausar Thompson be impactful immediately? Hey, will Ausar be the starter immediately? Monty is going out of his way to say, hey, we think it probably is going to happen immediately from day one, based on what we've seen from training camp and based on what we saw before training camp. So, I mean, at this point, as of October 15th, I think I'd be shocked at this point if Ausar Thompson is not the Pistons starting wing. Now, maybe they do something crazy. We'll talk about this a little bit later, too. We'll talk about it in the third segment. I think there's no way it could happen, but hey, some crazy stuff could happen. But I think at this point, it almost is, I feel like it's almost a guarantee that Ausar Thompson is going to be in the starting lineup. All we've heard from Monty, forget just about Ausar Thompson. Every chance we get from Monty, all he's talking about is defense, how important defense is. If you can't play defense, you won't play. If you play defense, you will play for me. If you know where to be on defense, you will play for me. Everything starts with defense. Even we'll talk about the use of analytics that Monty Williams spoke about that I thought was pretty interesting. You'll find out there, he talks about, he starts with offense, but then goes right into defense. So everything from Monty has been defense. From Troy over the offseason, defense. And who is likely going to be the Pistons' best wing defender out the gate? Ausar Thompson. And especially if it's not just straight up like point of attack defense, if it's just his overall defense in every area, and then he's also impressing in transition. Like, I can only imagine in training camp, if he's talking this glowingly about him, I have to assume that Ausar's doing more than just straight up defense. He must. His teammates have run out of their way to talk about how his playmaking is better than maybe people talk about. I've talked about his playmaking, so I don't know if they're talking about me, you feel me? But the point is, I think he's showing probably in training camp other things than just his defense. I have to assume Ausar Thompson is going to be starting. Now, whether it's for Bojan, whether that's for Stu, and if something crazy happens, whether it's for Jaden Ivey, whoever he's starting for, I'm getting to a point where I think it's almost a guarantee he's going to start. They need his defense, and if they really are talking about buying it, maybe not talking about, I guess the best way to say it is, if they're really walking the walk about the defense, Ausar probably should start then, because it's not that you should be expecting every rookie on the wing that has, potential defensively to be good out the gate. Part of it does say something about the Pistons roster construction, that a 20-year-old rookie is likely to be their best wing defender, even as a rookie, because the rest of the guys at their wings just aren't very good defensively. And then you got Isaiah Livers, who's also out due to injury. So some of it does say something about their roster construction, I'm sure. But then another part, it seems like that maybe Ausar, like we've mentioned on the podcast before, is that maybe he is one of the rookies who is instantly good defensively for the NBA. Not good for a rookie, but good relative to the NBA as a rookie. So we'll see what happens, but I think I'd feel pretty confident, man, that if I had money right now, I think I'd feel pretty confident. Not if I had money. I have some money, you feel me? But if I wanted to throw some money down on who the Pistons stars were, I'd feel pretty confident putting Ausar Thompson in the starting lineup at this point. It just, all the signs are pointing to it. And James Edwards III, he keeps writing articles hinting at it. I think, where there's smoke, there's fire. So I'm going to assume that Ausar Thompson's going to be in the starting lineup some way, somehow. We'll find out who it is exactly he's filling in for, but I think he's probably going to be their starter. So what do you guys think? After listening to that clip, all the things that Monty Williams has talked about this offseason and in the few days of training camp, do you guys think it's basically a guarantee of that Ausar Thompson is going to be the Pistons starting wing? Or do you think, hey, pump the brakes, he may still not start? Let me know what you guys' thoughts are in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. When we come back, there is another player that Monty, not Kuka Hill, okay, let me just make that clear, Monty Williams, not me, has went out of his way now on back-to-back-to-back days to talk about, to give credit to. And that's Killian Hayes. What does this mean? What's going on? We'll talk about that when we come back. But first, I've got to tell you guys, one of our sponsors. This one is FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So if you're a Lions fan, you're trying to get into it, you can go over to FanDuel. You can take the over on Jared Goff's passing yards. You can take the over on Jahmyr Gibbs catches. You can take the Lions spread. You can take the money line for them to straight up beat. I believe they play the Carolina Panthers this week. Straight up to beat the Carolina Panthers. You can do all that, or you can put them all into one betting slip. You can do all that with FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. Again, if you use code LOCKEDON, customers will get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place the $5 bet. So again, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season with FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. We are on our road to 10,000 subscribers by the end of this upcoming season. So again, if you guys have not hit that subscribe on the YouTube channel, I would really appreciate it. It's the best way to support the podcast. Again, let's try to reach that goal, man. I think we can do it. All right, so I want to make this very clear because I've had a few listeners, I've had a few fans say, you know, stop talking. Why you keep pushing this Killian Hayes thing? I'm not pushing Killian Hayes. Monty Williams is going out of his way to talk about Killian Hayes. So if you want to talk to anybody but mentioning Killian Hayes, it's Monty Williams. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, my plan throughout training camp, each day of training camp, is to simply talk about what Monty Williams is telling us and what we're hearing from players, what players we are being allowed to hear from, and what Monty Williams is giving us. That's all I'm talking about. And now this is now back-to-back days that he is going out of his way to mention Killian Hayes, which I think most fans probably should be happy about. That is a person that the Pistons drafted. So if he actually is playing well, if he actually is improved and he ends up cracking a rotation, I don't see why fans would be upset about that. As a guy you drafted, you'd assume that you'd want a draft pick to eventually pan out. But anyways, let's get into what Monty Williams said. So also, I want to make this clear to you guys too. I am not at these practices. Everything I'm getting is from the beat writers and the clips that get sent to me from those I am close with from training camp, who are there. So all that is being fed to me. I'm relaying it to you guys. In the future, I will hopefully be at some events, and there I'll have more clips to play for you guys from myself. But again, I'm not there during these times as of right now. All of this is being fed to me from beat writers and, again, people I'm close with who are there. So first thing, this is some tweets coming from James Edwards III, the Athletic Detroit Pistons beat writer I'm getting this from. So he tweets out, Monty Williams said Killian Hayes' size has always been intriguing to him, said he heard about him coming out the draft and has followed him closely from a distance. Mentioned his ability to make the right plays and his size defensively. Monty also went on to say that Killian has been quote-unquote terrific so far in camp. Now, if you go on to, and I suggest you guys all follow all the Pistons beat writers, whether that's James or Amari Sankovic II or Mike Curtis, follow all of them. You get all kinds of content from all of them. They all bring you different things. But then Amari also tweeted out, because he followed up with the question after he went out of his way to bring up Killian right there. Because I believe the question that he was asked was, how has this guys responded to being pushed? And he went on to say that, hey, Cade and Jalen Duren led a really strong practice last night, and also Killian Hayes was terrific. He's been really impressive, blah, blah, this, that, and the other. So, and then Amari followed up and asked him about Killian. And Amari said, Monty said on Killian, I like big guards who can defend. He plays the right way. I tell him if you compete every day, you will stand out. So, he also went on to say Killian has been showing his leadership in various of ways as well. So, look, am I a believer in Killian Hayes? Yes. This is not me feeding this to you guys. This is me simply talking about what's being said. So if we are to believe what Monty Williams is saying, and like I told you guys in the last podcast with Brandon Dent, now that we're in training camp and now that this stuff is being said, I feel comfortable saying this out loud. I had heard throughout the offseason on at least 2 different occasions that Monty Williams was a fan of Killian Hayes, because of his defense's ability to switch and how he was a bigger guard. That's exactly what he's laying out here in training camp. So it's not shocking to me to hear it. But what I don't want to talk about Killian Hayes himself as much. I don't think that's where I'm trying to go with this. What I'm trying to go with, if Monty Williams actually is, let's say, telling the truth, he's not just lying to everybody. I don't see why he'd lie about this. But if he's telling the truth and things are going well for Killian Hayes and he's standing out in training camp, and let's say he plays well in preseason. I'm assuming everyone's going to get a chance in preseason. And he plays well in preseason. I mean, how would Killian Hayes even be able to fit in the rotation? Because they do have a lot of guards, and there is a lot of a crunch for minutes right now. Well, the easy answer, the number one answer would simply be, well, if he's outplaying other guys, he'll just simply play over them. If Monty feels like he's outplaying them, I mean, he'll play over those guys. Like that's the easy one, okay? Like, that's obvious. However, Monty Morris is going to play. I can't see any world where Monty Morris is not playing. And Alec Burks is going to be playing. I can't see any world that doesn't happen. I think one of the reasons and one of the ways Killian Hayes can fit in the rotation, I think this is probably a way that Monty is looking at Killian Hayes, which is why he's bringing up the fact that he's a big guard with long arms, that's physical and plays defense and can switch. Now, if you remember on the last podcast with Brandon said that something he's heard from Monty throughout the offseason is that he likes switching. Like, he likes having guys who are switchable. Killian Hayes is one of the switchable guys on the team. So I'm going to assume that if Killian Hayes for real is actually playing well in training camp, and Monty's telling us the truth, and Monty wants him in the rotation because of his defense, if this is all true, I'm going to assume Killian Hayes will probably be the backup 3 then. Because like I said, Killian Hayes is 6'5", he has long arms. If you've looked at him, if you've seen him now, I think Monty mentioned this as well. And I think Brandon, I keep referencing Brandon. You guys follow him on Twitter at Detroit Kool-Aid. Great follow. He's the Pistons beat writer for World War Sports. But he's mentioned being at the training camp and being at the practice facility, etc. Killian looks bigger, stronger, more like a man. Not to say that he didn't look strong before. Killian was pretty built well. But they're saying that he looks like a grown man. He's a guy that could probably guard threes. That's probably his better defensive position anyways. And he's a guy who can switch 1, 2, 3. And if he has switched down to 4, he can hold his own. So that's what I'm assuming. If Monty Williams for real is trying to put Killian Hayes in the rotation because of his defense, and Killian Hayes really has improved this offseason. I heard he had a strong offseason. Take that for whatever you will. You hear that about a lot of players. I understand. Take it with a grain of salt. But if Monty Williams is impressed with Killian and wants to get him in the rotation, that's the only way I can see it actually happening. I don't see a world where all of a sudden, I love Killian Hayes so much. You know, he's playing so great defense, I'm going to play him over Monty Morris. No, that's not going to happen. Killian Hayes' defense is so great. He's a two-way player. He's making plays on both ends of the floor. I'm playing him over Alec Burks. No, that's just not going to happen. I can't see that happening. The only opening in this rotation, I think, is at the 3 position, and that's whether they start Ausar or Bojan. Because if they were to start, let's say if they start Ausar, then you play Bojan at the 4, you run Killian Hayes at the 3, and now you got really good spacing, and you got a good defender at the 3 who's switchable. If you want to start Bojan, bring Ausar. Ausar can play the 4. We've talked about Ausar playing the 4 multiple times on the podcast. And then you just have 2 switchable guys now, Killian and Ausar Thompson. So that would be the only way I could see Killian Hayes cracking the rotation and getting consistent minutes. Now, if he cracks the rotation early on and he's playing really well, I mean, obviously, when guys play well, you give them more minutes. It's not really about this whole, what we do on podcasts when we sit here and try to break it down. Okay, well, who am I not going to play then? No, it's if he's out there playing well, you just obviously just keep giving him minutes. Like I don't think it's as confusing as maybe we make it out to be. When we talk about these kind of things, you usually just play the players who are playing well in that specific time, whatever. And despite what Monty's bringing up with Killian Hayes, I do think it's still going to be. I think that the likeliness is that he is not in the rotation because they have Cade. They have Jaden Ivey, and they did bring in Monty Morris, and they have Alec Burks. Like, those guys, unless Killian Hayes took some sort of big jump in this offseason, which I guess is not impossible. It's not impossible. But unless he made some big jump, I can't see him being better than those guys right now. If he is, I'd love it. Again, I'm a Killian Hayes believer. I'd be ecstatic if he's better than those guys. But the likelihood that he's not. So the only way I could see it happening is if he wants to play Killian Hayes at the 3, which I do think is possible. I think that makes sense to do. It's just a matter of, okay, well, if you're playing Killian Hayes at the 3, that means Joe Harris isn't playing. And again, Joe Harris did went out of his way himself at media day to say, hey, I'm one of those vets that, hey, if I'm not playing, I don't care. Like, I'm not going to sit around bitch about it. I'm going to be a good vet. I'm going to sit on the bench. I'm going to root my guys on. I'm going to give them pointers. I'll be cool. I would be cool, too, if I was getting paid $23 million. But, hey, it's cool to have a vet like that. So that's the only spot I can see this working out in. So stay tuned to how this works out. Again, I want to make this clear. This is not me going on my way to push Killian Hayes. Monty Williams keeps bringing him up. Monty Williams keeps going out of his way to bring up Killian Hayes looking good. This is not me. This is not me doing it. I'm simply talking about what Monty's talking about. So if you have a problem with it, take it up with Monty. Don't come at me. I'm just the messenger here, all right? I'm just the messenger. So let me know in the comment section down below, though, if Monty is telling the truth and he actually is believing that Killian Hayes is looking good and he might try to find a way to get him in the rotation. Where do you see Killian Hayes possibly fitting in? Do you see a future where he possibly is outplaying a Monty Morris or an Alec Burks? Do you see him at the backup three? Where do you see him fitting in if he is impressing the coach this much to warrant rotation minutes? Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kukahill. When we come back, I want to talk about Jaden Ivey and also the use of analytics that Monty Williams kind of touched on. We'll talk about both those things when we come back. But first, I've got to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, Birddogs. Birddogs make you look incredibly good. Birddogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Birddogs shorts do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts, too, that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. Birddogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khakis, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice the movement. Birddogs uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Birddogs are functional for just about any occasion out there. You want to go play basketball? Birddogs will be good for you there. You want to go out and play some golf? Good for you there. You want to go out on a date? Hey, you'll still look good in those. You want to go out with the boys? Hey, good for you. You want to go out to the pool? Hey, Birddogs works out there. You want to go work out? You want to go to work? Birddogs fit in just about any scenario possible. So go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA or enter promo code LockedOnNBA at checkout for a free Birddogs water bottle with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you. Again, that is birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free water bottle at checkout with Birddogs. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. This isn't going to be a long segment. I just want to touch on two things briefly. I know if you're watching this on YouTube, you see on the side one of the topics says use of analytics. But actually, there's somewhere else I want to go first. And that's a mistake on my part. I thought about it as I was recording. I'm like, you know what? This probably should be more important here. But we will talk about what Monty said when it came to analytics. But anyways, there's been something interesting brewing, and I don't know if there's something there or if there's nothing there. But as we talked about on last podcast episode with Brandon Dent, there was like a little like in James Edwards' article, I believe it was 2 articles ago, where he talked about predicting what he's hearing and seeing from Monty Williams, whatever, when it comes to the rotations, etc., when it comes to defense. And in there, he said you can pretty much pencil in Cade, Stu, and Duren. And there was a name that was left out of there that I thought, whoa, hold on. Like, he's penciled in as a starter. There's no way ever that he's not going to be a starter. And that was Jaden Ivey. So we talked about that a little bit, how that was a little, that's a little fishy. That's maybe we're reading too much into it. Maybe not. But just perked my ears up a little bit. Then today, Jaden Ivey apparently was asked about if being a starter is of importance and something guys need to be seen as. And this is from James Edwards again, his tweet. He says, Jaden Ivey said, in short, no, and that it's all about winning to him and doing what the team needs you to do, wherever that may be. Do I think Jaden Ivey's coming off the bench? Probably not. I think I can't see it happening. But I think it's a little like, I think it's at least something to watch now, because this is now the second straight day where there's been some kind of talk about Jaden Ivey potentially not being the starter. And it's not coming from fans. It's not coming from, the Pistons community. It's coming from the Pistons themselves. It's coming from one of the players. It's coming from one of the coaches. It's coming from one of the beat writers. Like, again, could I be reading too much into it? Yeah, and that's why I don't even think I'm reading too much into it, because I still think Jaden Ivey's going to, so I just can't see that not happening. But back-to-back days where this has been a topic, and Jaden Ivey himself has went out and said, no, I mean, starting doesn't matter. Winning is all that matters, and doing whatever the team needs you to do. Like, I don't know. I just feel like that's something maybe we want to watch for. Because it has my ears perked up. If I'd be lying if I said at least I wasn't like, that's weird. That's interesting. And that's back-to-back days now. I've found myself saying, that's interesting when it comes to Jaden Ivey starting. So that's why I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, everyone's talking about, Cade, Ivey, Ausar, Stu, Durham being the starter. Like, what if it's Cade, Ausar, Bojan, Stu, Durham? What if Ivey's the one getting brought off the bench? Like, I want to make this clear. I do not think that's going to happen. I think if I had to put my money on like the percentages, I'd still say 95% chance Jaden Ivey starts. But before this week, I had it 100%. Like I like no doubt about it. Even talking about it, even mentioning it, asking him a question about it, writing about it, talking about it on the podcast, even any of that, I thought would just be lunacy. I'd be like, why are you wasting your time doing that? But now, after 2 days, I've went from 100% to 95%, to where I think it's something at least you should be like, let's watch that. Let's watch that. So, again, I think Ivey's going to start, but I think it's interesting that this is now the second straight day this has come up. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that, though. Do you guys think it's nothing? Do you guys think it's at least interesting? What are you guys thinking? Let me know. And then lastly, not going to spend too long on it, but I personally like hearing this kind of stuff from coaches. Monty Williams was asked about, the use of analytics. And what does he think about analytics? And Monty Williams gave the answer of any real person who knows about analytics, and anyone who actually knows what analytics mean, like the analytics they use mean, the smart people who use analytics know that, and this is basically what Monty Williams said. I'm not going to play the full clip. It's like a 3-minute clip. I can't play that on the podcast. But he basically said, analytics are good with context. Like, just throwing a number out there with no context to the situation means nothing. And he also mentioned how, and this is the main thing that I really like when coaches say, and anyone says, because too often people who don't really know what analytics are, who just throw out, oh, this is a nerd speak, or, hey, stop with the numbers, it's just eye test. Like, people like that who don't actually know what analytics are, just hate analytics because it's something they don't get, just assume that you have to get 43s up, 53s, 63s up, and just don't shoot twos. That's just not the case. And Monty Williams mentioned that, like, hey, yeah, you want to get threes up. You don't want to just take no threes. Like, yes, you want to get a lot of threes up, but you want to shoot high percentage on twos, because twos are the easiest shot in the game. Like, layups are the easiest shot in the game. Shots at the rim, the easiest shots in the game. So Monty mentioned, like, hey, if you can get a high percentage on twos and you end up taking, more twos because you are efficient at those, that's good too. Being efficient is all that matters. Whether it's efficient, some teams will be a better three-point shooter than finishing team. Some teams will be a better finishing team than three-point shooting team. Now, there is eventually a math equation that is going to play out that, hey, if you make 10 twos, but the other team you're going against makes 5 threes, like, you lose that. Like, there is, like, well, actually, do you miss that? Do you lose that one? Is it? I just threw out some random number. I just realized that probably isn't how you wouldn't lose that. So if you make 10 twos, that's 20 points. If you make, let's say, like 7 threes, then you make 21 points, you get outscored. So there is somewhat of a math equation where, yeah, you do want to make sure you get some threes up. Like, there is a certain, margin that you want to hit with threes, because you can just get outnumbered at some point. Like, that does happen. But overall, if you're getting a lot of layups, if you're scoring a lot in the paint, not only are you efficient at that would be great, but like Monty also went on to say with that, hey, just getting a made basket, being efficient at just overall scoring allows you to get into a set defense, which there is, maybe there is, but not one that I know, that an analytic that goes out there and say, hey, this is what happens when you score and you get back on a set defense. It helps you this percentage amount more. And, I'm probably sure that NBA front offices probably have, those kind of numbers available to him. He kind of mentioned that. So I actually, I'm almost 100% sure the Pistons probably have those numbers available to him because he kind of referenced the fact that that those exist. So my overall point is it was cool to hear Monty speak about it, because if you have a coach who just believes analytics should never be used, you're not in a good position. If you have a coach that believes numbers is all that matters and you should only be getting 73s up and no 2s or anything, and like 2s are bad, then you don't really understand what analytics actually are saying. And I feel like listening to Monty talk, he has a very well understanding of what analytics are, how useful they are, and also understand that they are determined by context. You can't just use numbers for anything. There's no arbitrary number without context. Everything needs context, and there's more to just the numbers. So I thought that was interesting to hear him talk about it, and I agreed with everything he said. Like, again, if you understand what analytics are and you actually know what they mean, you know how to use them, you should know this. Like, this should be understandable. Like, everyone should already know that. But I know that right now, especially at this point, with the rise of the 3-ball and people being so against any kind of use of numbers because they just assume it's nerds or whatever, there's a big war on, like, analytics, basically. So I'm appreciative of Monty, saying what needs to be said with that, because every NBA team uses analytics, and as soon as people understand and get it through that, analytics are here to stay and teams use them and they're important, the better we can all be. Now, once you start talking about context, okay, then we can do that. But just dismissing numbers, the analytics completely, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage for no reason. So that's it. That's all I've got for you guys today, though. What do you guys think? What's your guys' biggest takeaway from training camp so far? Let me know all that. Comment section down below or over on Twitter at @KukaHill. That's all I've got for you guys today. Hit that subscribe button to the YouTube channel. Leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. Till next time, till next training camp, let's find out what Monty gives us next day. Can't wait. Every day's been interesting. Every day's been fun. I'm happy Pistons basketball is back. I'm happy the NBA's back. This is fun. I feel like we all have, not just me with the podcast, but fans in general. Everyone just has a little bit, a little jump start of energy now with the Pistons coming back and practicing. Everyone has a little bit of jump start, like we just drink a Monster or something. I'm really juiced up. I'm excited for the season. So can't wait to see it coming. Can't wait for the first preseason game. So, but anyways, until then, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. Till next time. Peace out.